Number 10, mysterious kayak attack. Thalassophobia is the fear of the ocean, but it's not just that. It's the fear that creeps up when you can't see the bottom of a river or a lake and don't know what's lurking beneath. Considering only 5% of the Earth's ocean has been explored, I feel like this is a pretty valid fear in a lot of ways, amplified by this video. Check it out. Okay, so we don't actually get to see it, but I think that's what makes this video so terrifying. You can only assume that it was a shark, but we don't know for sure, and I can't even comprehend how terrifying it would be, not being able to see how big or where this creature was, especially considering the ferocity with which whatever it was tried to attack him. This could have been one deadly encounter. Number 9, saving a nurse shark. The craziest part about this video for me is the irony of this encounter. Had these humans not shown up, this shark probably would have died without being able to get food or protect itself because it was literally trapped. But had humans not become little trash mongrels, then the shark wouldn't have been trapped in this way in the first place. So it's just like a weird, crazy circular cycle that I think this video highlights really, really well. And I hope those guys keep doing what they're doing, saving the ocean one piece of plastic at a time. Number 8, Otter on the run. This next one is so surreal. I'll let the video speak for itself.
Come on up, bud. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh!
Not only did these people get up close and personal to an otter, which definitely is on my list because they're so cute, they hold hands so they don't separate from each other. How adorable is that? Immediately after, they got to see a massive orca swim close to their boat. In this one instance, humanity and nature walked hand in hand as this otter fought for its life. But then this guy just can't move because otherwise this poor otter will meet a bloody fate. Does the boatman just let this poor guy succumb to survival of the fittest? Thankfully, he doesn't. The video kind of ends on a definite cliffhanger, but rest assured, the vessel's owner, John Dornella, eventually drove the boat to a safe distance, and then eventually the otter decided to jump ship. Pretty cool. But it turns out that the otter wasn't just fleeing from any orca. No. John discovered the orca's ID number and found out it was the largest in its pod. This guy did this otter a huge solid, that is for sure. Number 7, nurse shark. So fun fact, I actually swam with nurse sharks a while ago, one year on vacation, and it wasn't as dangerous as swimming with sharks sounds because nurse sharks are actually pretty docile. They just kind of chilled out at the bottom of the sand pit and the guides had to go down and like rustle them up. And they were like, no, leave me alone, I was sleeping, bro. Very, very chill experience. There were also giant manta rays, which was kind of the thing I was the most afraid of because of the whole Steve Irwin fiasco. But still, nurse sharks kind of live up to their name, but still, put some food in your hand and you might see a whole other side. Thankfully, the woman in this video is okay, but it does just go to show, maybe don't feed the sharks, even if their name sounds disarming. Number 6, whale to the rescue. It would be surreal to even see a whale that close, but to have one save your life, there are no words. Check this out. This is such a mystery to me. This is real life Flipper, except instead of Elijah Wood and a dolphin, it's a whale. Like a whale went, oh, that thing, whatever it is, it's in danger and I'm gonna let it know. The innate kindness this animal was capable of, I just don't even know how to wrap my mind around this. It's not like, I haven't even met humans that kind. That's not true. People are pretty great. It's not like we have an IQ test we can make for animals to take, but we know they have very strong instincts and we know that they've shown signs of emotional intelligence. So I don't know, guys. Whales might have just become my favorite animal. I just think it's kind of surreal. I mean, we know that the size of a brain doesn't necessarily correlate with like intelligence, but in terms of the ratio of brain size to body mass, it can. So who knows? But either way, this video is so surreal and I can't even believe it exists. Number 5, baby beluga. Speaking of whales, beluga whales were the reason I wanted to go to places like marine lands so bad when I was younger, you know, before I realized that they actually weren't that great. They look like the perfect mix between a dolphin and a whale, and they just look like they're always having a good time. They look like they're smiling and curious, and I just love them. This video is no exception. This man just kayaking, living his best life when a beautiful, perfect, and curious little beluga whale just comes up to visit, and he even gets to pet him. My dreams realize. See, we don't even need places like marine land to experience this kind of natural wonder. Though it looks like this little guy was camera shy because it just took his GoPro and then gave it back. Like, again, mind-blowing because somehow this blue whale knew, oh, wait a minute. This guy, he wants this back. I'm gonna go get it. Like, I can't even. This is insane. What do you guys think of that? Wow. Number 4, close encounter of the whale kind. I held my breath when I first saw this clip. A warning to anyone going scuba diving in an ocean. If you see a flurry of fish just bolting it to the surface, get out of the way. These divers came so close to getting too close to the inside of a whale. Something that will come up later. Hint, hint. Stunning and terrifying. What a great mix. When not one but 2 massive whales breached the surface, those guys got so far out of there, they were like, wow, this is great, whoa, and then they just fled to the boat. I would too, for sure. Creepy, 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 but beautiful at the same time. Like, I don't even know what that would be like to experience. Anyways, guys, before we get to our top 3, remember to hit that like button and subscribe to stay a part of our hive. We appreciate all the help that we can get, and we appreciate any and all love you show us, so thank you so much. Number 3, an octopus lending a hand. Can we call this story a love story? I'm not sure. I feel like that's treading dangerous waters. As I mentioned earlier, we know humans have barely scratched the surface when it comes to exploring the ocean, but that means that a lot of creatures still haven't met us. I mean, chances are, sadly, they've met our garbage before they've seen us. But this interaction between 2 curious beings just goes to show we aren't the only ones asking questions. Number 2, deflate before it's too late. This next clip is my worst nightmare. I also think this is the first time I've ever mentioned Flipper twice in one day. Well, at least in the last 5 years. I can't remember the last time I saw that movie. But there is that scene where he's just floating in a raft and it gets attacked by a massive shark and just starts deflating. Once you watch this clip, you can understand why it immediately made me flash back to that moment. I would have been so paralyzed with fear. I mean, what are they gonna do? They are literally minutes from being shark meat. This is not how I would like to encounter such a magnificent creature. I would prefer not at all, or at least safely behind my TV screen during Shark Week, because love me some Shark Week, but wow. They're standing there filming! Dudes, call for help! You got a phone! And number 1, a man inside a whale. Of course this is number 1. Remember how I said we were going to come to this later? Well, here it is. Michael Picard, a lobster fisherman in Massachusetts, almost met death inside the mouth of a whale. This is the closest real-life experience to that scene in Pinocchio we all have nightmares about, you know, when they're like fighting the whale and they end up inside it. Terrifying. Spoilers if you've never seen the movie, but also, why haven't you seen the movie? Michael was diving for lobster when he suddenly heard a loud bang and then everything went dark. He said it felt like getting hit by a freight truck, which I mean, isn't really far off. He thought, and I quote, "What the heck, did I just get eaten by a shark? But no, a shark's mouth is not that big and I don't feel any teeth," unquote. Next thing he knew, he was flying through the water at an incredibly high speed, thinking he was going to die. Of course, how terrifying would that be? But after 30 to 40 seconds of him banging on the whale's mouth, he finally spat him out. So, to be clear, he wasn't swallowed by the whale, but he was just hanging out in his mouth Dory and Marlin style. But still, like, how crazy is that? Not many people get to say that they were eaten by a whale and live to tell the tale.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have Mont Blanc and Emo. Halifax is a port city that is located here in Canada in the province of Nova Scotia. Halifax was a super important place during the First World War, as it acted as a hot spot for ships that were carrying supplies, troops, ammunition, you know, war stuff. On December 6th, 1917, a Norwegian ship called Emo left Halifax, and it ended up colliding with a French ship called the Mont Blanc. This is already disastrous, but what made it significantly worse was the fact that the Mont Blanc held explosives. Because of the collision, the Mont Blanc was pushed towards the shore and ended up setting the harbor front ablaze. Just a few minutes later, the entire ship exploded with a blast so strong that windows 50 miles away were shattered. Unfortunately, there were many people at the waterfront when the explosion happened, which led to a total of 1,800 people dying in this incident. 9,000 people were injured, and it is said that 1,600 homes were destroyed in the blast. The force of this blast really cannot be understated. It was so powerful that it caused a tidal wave and violent tremors, which uprooted trees from the ground, damaged railroad tracks, and destroyed numerous buildings whose debris was scattered hundreds of yards away. In the end, this is what made this explosion one of the most violent non-nuclear explosions in history, and what makes it likely the world's largest accidental man-made explosion. In our number 9 spot today, we have the MV Goya. This ship was built in Norway in 1940, and it was meant to be a freighter, but in a World War II world. This ship ended up being used as a passenger ship in order to evacuate citizens as a part of Operation Hannibal. This, of course, as anybody could reasonably imagine, meant that the ship was very often overcrowded as they were trying to rescue as many people as possible at the time. On April 16th, 1945, the ship was carrying over 7,000 passengers, which is 5 times the amount of people it could safely carry, when it was hit by a torpedo that was sent from a Soviet submarine just before midnight. The force of the explosion was so great that the ship only took minutes to sink, and since the timing of the incident had most passengers in their beds, you can imagine the outcome. Because of the lack of proper record keeping, and with the absolute panic of trying to rescue people with the imminent threat of attack, it isn't quite clear exactly how many people lost their lives in this wreck, but it is thought that somewhere between 6,000 to 7,000 passed away, which is unbelievable. It is thought that there were around 180 survivors of the wreck, and due to the unbelievable tragedy, the location of the wreck has been officially declared a war grave by Polish authorities. In our number 8 spot today, we have the SS Cap Arcona. This ship was a German luxury ocean liner that was launched in 1927, but by the time the mid-1940s rolled around, this one was put to use to help the country's war efforts. This time, this ship was converted into a prison ship. On April of 1945, with the advance of the British Army, prisoners being held at concentration camps were being loaded onto ships, and the Cap Arcona was one of them. On May 3rd, 1945, with more than 6,000 people on board, the ship was attacked by the British Air Force. The prisoners on board were being held below deck at the time, and the ship was not marked with any sort of red cross, so unfortunately those in the British Air Force did not realize that the ship was filled with prisoners at the time. The ship capsized but did not sink entirely, but still this wreck caused somewhere around 5,000 deaths. In our number 7 spot today, we have the MV Le Joola. This was a ship that was owned by the Senegalese government, and despite the fact that it was designed to carry a maximum of 580 150 passengers. On September 26, 2002, this ship had at least 2,000 people on board. This is obviously a huge issue, and this coupled with the fact that there was a large amount of people who were sleeping on the ship's deck, which of course is above the center of buoyancy, only made matters worse. The ship was en route to the Senegalese capital of Dakar, and as it sailed farther out to sea than it was licensed to sail, it ended up encountering a storm and really rough waters. The ship ended up capsizing, and out of the 2,000 on board, only 64 people survived the entire ordeal. Not only was this because of the fact that the ship sank exceptionally quickly, but it's mostly because rescue was not sent out until several hours after the entire ordeal. This wreck is thought to be one of the worst non-military disasters in all of maritime history. Despite the severity of the situation, no one has been charged or prosecuted for this disaster to this day. In our number 6 spot today, we have the RMS Lancastria. This ship was a British ocean liner, but in April of 1940 she was reconstructed to be a troop ship under the command of Captain Rudolph Sharp. He sent the ship off to help aid in the evacuation of British troops and citizens from France, and on June 14, 1940, the ship departed from Liverpool. On June 16th, the ship anchored near the town of Saint Nazaire, and the following day somewhere between 4,000 and 9,000 refugees loaded on board. This included civilians, soldiers, and other military officials. While carrying all of these people, around 4 p.m. on June 17th, the German Junkers Ju-88 bombed the ship, which caused it to capsize and sink in an extremely fast 20 minutes. This caused over 1,400 tons of fuel to leak into the water, some part catching fire, and while there were 2,477 survivors, no one is quite sure how many people lost their lives. This is because it was obviously a hectic rescue mission that had people rushing aboard. No one is quite sure just how many people were on board before the attack happened, but it is thought that somewhere from 4,000 to 6,500 people might have lost their lives during this, which is a terrifying number. In our number 5 spot today, we have the SS General Slocum. This passenger steamboat was built in Brooklyn, New York, and on June 15, 1904, it was carrying members of the St. Mark's Evangelical Lutheran Church as they were on their way to a church picnic. They were traveling up the East River on the way to Long Island Sound when a fire started in the lamp room. Considering the fact that the lamp room was obviously filled with lamp oil, while a fire on board a ship is never good, this is one of the worst case scenarios. Lamp oil, oil rags, a nearby paint locker, and a cabin filled with gasoline actually are what created this worst case scenario. The safety equipment of this ship was not nearly up to standards, as it was rarely even checked, and when the crew attempted to get the fire hose in order to put out the flames, they found a rotten fire hose that crumbled in their hands. The life jackets being given out to people began to fall apart, and they couldn't even access the lifeboats at all. I cannot even imagine the panic people were feeling at this point. Many of the passengers saw no other option and they jumped in the water to try and swim, but like many Americans at the time, they didn't know how, and they were wearing heavy wool clothes which only worked to weigh them down. At the end of the day, it is said that around 1,021 people lost their lives in this absolutely tragic event. In our number 4 spot today, we have the SS Kiangya. On December 4th, 1948, this ship was carrying thousands of passengers who were fleeing Shanghai due to the advancing People's Liberation Army. On this day, the official number of passengers was said to be 2,150, which was already almost double its capacity, but it said that several thousand more people crowded onto this ship right before it left the docks. I mean, this makes a lot of sense. It's weighing the risk of packing onto this boat versus staying in the situation you're currently trying to flee. As this ship got to the mouth of the Hangpu River, it is believed that it may have struck some sort of World War II era mine or something because it just exploded. Rescuers were also unaware of the explosion for hours, which only made the situation worse. Somewhere around 700 passengers were rescued, but this meant that a number estimated to be somewhere from 2,750 to as many as 4,000 people people lost their lives in this explosion and the subsequent sinking of the ship. In our number 3 spot today, we have the HMS Armenia. This was a Soviet passenger ship that was first launched in November of 1928, and she had a maximum capacity of 980 passengers. During the Second World War, this ship was put to use by transporting troops, and from October 9th, 1941, the ship was used to evacuate soldiers, workers, and materials from Odessa. In November of 1941, there was the invasion of German troops that led to an extreme rush to evacuate the hospitals in the city of Sevastopol, and the Armenia was repurposed again into a hospital ship. This led to about 4,000 wounded people and medical personnel from 11 different hospitals being loaded onto the ship to set sail towards Yalta. Once there, another 1,000 passengers were loaded onto the ship in a rush, none of which were officially recorded. On November 7th, the ship was attacked by a German Henkel HE-111 bomber, and in just 4 minutes the ship sadly sank, taking the lives of almost everyone on board. Just 8 people survived. In German records, there was no mention that the Armenia was a hospital ship, so it's unclear if they omitted that detail or if they mistakenly believed that it was a troop carrier. Either way, it is absolutely devastating. In our number 2 spot today, we have the SS Principe Umberto. This ship was built in 1909 as an Italian passenger ship, but in the times during the First World War, it ended up being converted into an armed merchant cruiser. On June 8th, 1916, the ship was transporting troops on the Adriatic Sea. These troops were a part of the 55th Infantry Regiment, and they were on their way back from Albania to Italy. Although this ship was accompanied by others, it still ended up being struck by an Austro-Hungarian U-5 submarine that had launched a torpedo attack. The ship ended up sinking just minutes later, and it is said that this disaster took the lives of 1,926 men, making it the worst naval disaster of the First World War in terms of lives lost. In our number 1 spot today, we have the Yamato. The Yamato was a Japanese battleship that served in the Second World War. She was the lead ship of her class of battleships, and she was one of 2 of the heaviest and most powerfully armed battleships ever constructed. On April 7th, 1945, the ship was about 300 kilometers south of the Japanese island of Kyushu when it was confronted by a US carrier-based aircraft. This aircraft bombed the ship, which led to it capsizing. This then caused the ammunition on board to explode, which tore the ship in 2. After a total of 13 torpedo hits and 8 bomb hits, the ship completely sunk. The ship was accompanied by a light cruiser and 4 other destroyers, which were all sunk in this event as well. This sadly led to thousands of deaths, as most of the crew lost their lives in this battle.
Number 10, Basilosaurus. Sounds like a basilisk. You may be thinking, is she about to say that basilisks are real? Am I wrong? Probably. I don't know you. How are you? How's your day going? Me? I feel like I'm developing thalassophobia. I don't even know how to say that right. Welcome everyone to the Basilosaurus, an evil shark snake whale that actually existed on the planet for a while there. Of course, they were massive, growing to 50 to 85 feet long in size, but its size was about the only thing it had going for it, sadly. It couldn't echolocate, couldn't deep dive or breach, just had to kind of chill at one level. Theoretically, if you did see it while swimming, it couldn't and wouldn't chase you if you dove too deep or climbed up on land, because why would it? It looked terrifying and could kill you, but this creature was probably the one who only ever earned a participation badge in terms of most terrifying creature in the sea. If you're like me, you started out scared, but now you just kind of feel bad for the guy. There's a reason he didn't survive. Number 9, Tanystropheus. It's a water giraffe! Tanystropheus is essentially a water giraffe, except with short legs and a super long neck stretching up to 20 feet long. It could literally be standing on the ocean floor and just have its head poking up like a submarine telescope, just like. Which apparently is exactly what it did when hunting for food. Its front legs were shorter than its back legs, which somehow helped it pitch its neck above the surface to hunt for lunch on land. Fossils of the creature have been found near the waters of Europe and the Middle East and China, but exactly how much time they spent in the water versus on land is still debated. We may never know unless we find a mosquito or something conserved in resin that provides us with enough genetic info so we can bring them back to life. But that'll never happen, will it? Number 8, Jaekelopterus. If you're having a bad day, then I have just the words to comfort you. Giant sea scorpion. You see? Nothing could be worse than that, except there is. I'm glad nature decided that we didn't need this and that they went extinct. It existed long before the dinosaurs and was a victim to the Permian-Triassic extinction event, which killed 90% of all life on Earth. One of the largest arthropods to ever exist, it reached about 8 feet long, which is about 3 feet larger than little me. Nothing really like it exists anymore, and its closest existing relatives to some degree is the horseshoe crab. They call it a sea scorpion, but whether its tail actually was venomous, we don't know. Archaeologists aren't sure, but its tail does resemble a scorpion, so they think it could be. Number 7, Helicoprion. Imagine a shark designed to cut pizza into 6 to 8 even slices. That is what a Helicoprion was. A prehistoric shark around 270 million years old, best known for its weird vertically circular toothy saw jaw. Paleontologists aren't quite sure as to where exactly its teeth protruded from. Some even consider that it might be attached to the tail or like the side. But the overall consensus was that it sat straight up in the mouth from the lower jaw. A specimen found in 1950 was located in a bay in Idaho, so we know they used to hang around that part of the world a bit. The mouth saw, as we're gonna call it, had 117 teeth, and based on a 3D animated model, scientists were able to determine that it did jut up from the lower jaw. Like that, like what is that? How did it eat? Like it just doesn't make sense. I'm not really surprised that this guy didn't last, because how would you deal with that? How? Number 6, Dunkleosteus. It's like a very big turtle mated with a shark and then immediately regretted it. Not as big as some of the other creatures I mentioned, but definitely something even they would hesitate to mess with. This dude wasn't a picky eater in any sense, weighing at 4,000 tons and measuring 33 feet long. This guy was ready and eager to compete with even the toughest ones on this list. Sharp teeth? Pfft, didn't need them. It used 2 sharp blades to snap and crush its prey, carving through bone like a hot knife through butter. That's how strong it was. It also had solid bone-like armor near its head that it used as a battering ram against any challengers. I feel like if there were mythical civilizations, this would be like the perfect underwater steed. It was made for war. But also, this was one of the creatures, and probably one of the first, to ever have to engage in coitus in order to reproduce. So, sure, some would say they were fighters, but underneath that hard shell, they were lovers too. They obviously weren't very good at it because they're extinct now. Before we go any further, remember to hit that like button and subscribe as always for more, especially if you're new here. You like us. Come on, like it, subscribe. We love it. Number 5, Dirk-Mahara Chakrozi. This one is actually a more recent discovery made in the past 60-ish years. The Dirk-Mahara is Gaelic for marine lizard, which is exactly what it was, kind of. It's best described as what would happen if you mated a crocodile with a dolphin. Flipper, but scalier. Fossil remains were pieced together like prehistoric Jenga after they were first discovered in 1959. Finally, in January 2015, scientists announced a new genus of ichthyosaur. This creature predates the Jurassic period and was probably one of the head honchos around that time. Had it lived long enough into the Jurassic period, it would probably have been gobbled up, considering the creatures who came after were, quite a bit larger, as we'll discover. Number 4, Pliosaur. So we've talked about massive, more terrifying versions of things on this list, but we couldn't leave out a warped version of a crocodile, now could we? Growing to about 59 feet in length and lived around 155 million years ago, this thing could swallow a Dirk-Mahara in one bite. Not surprising, since its jaw was about the size of the average human, complete with razor-sharp gnashers. According to fossils found in England and Norway, this creature resembles a crocodile in very similar ways, aside from its long paddle-shaped limbs. This allowed it to swim at insanely fast speeds, able to travel around 6 miles per hour. Archaeologists have found the remains of mainly mollusks and other marine reptiles in its stomach, but more terrifyingly, other dinosaurs. Jury is still out as to whether they took the creatures down themselves or feasted on any remains they found, the latter being more likely. Number 3, the Megalodon. Scared of sharks? Well, maybe skip ahead because we are about to talk about the guy we are all grateful doesn't exist anymore. The Megalodon. 2 words, Big Daddy. This guy was bigger than a school bus with giant teeth ready to tear into ambitious prey like whales and whatever else it felt like. Fossils of this mammoth of nightmares have been found across the world from Europe to Africa to North America. This beast had no boundaries, and of course, when you're as big as this guy, why would you? It's a common belief that they coexisted with dinosaurs, but they actually missed them by around 40 million years. They actually lived around 2.6 to 1.5 million years ago, which implies it may have been around for humans. The reason they went extinct, however, is assumed because of the Ice Age. The Megalodon enjoyed warm waters, and it might have diminished its food supply, so thanks nature, you're the best. Number 2, Leviathan melvili, the ultimate killer whale. The whale's so big it had to eat other whales. And also, if you're wondering if I'm meaning to say Leviathan, I'm not. Though it was originally Leviathan, they had to change it because it was taken. So Leviathan it is. If you've heard the horrific story of Moby Dick, then this would be the whale that they faced, though probably not because they were extinct long before the book was even written. They lived around 12 to 13 million years ago during the Miocene epoch and could grow up to 45 to 60 feet. The head alone was around 3 meters long. On top of their immense size, they had a terrifying set of sharp, deep-rooted teeth, each about the size of a 2-liter bottle of pop, which is more than double the size of a T-Rex's teeth. So with big teeth needs big game, and the Leviathan rose to the occasion. From large squids to other whales, the Leviathan was a force to be reckoned with, and one I never ever want to encounter. So if there's a trip going back in time, count me out. Number 1, the Tylosaurus. It sounds massive, it is massive. It makes you glad you weren't around 65 million years ago. The Tylosaurus was a water-bound lizard who had strong, sturdy limbs that evolved to eventually walk on land. Not a pleasant thought. Its gaping mouth allowed it to swallow creatures whole, or if it couldn't do that, its strong jaws and razor-sharp teeth took care of that. It could grow to the length of 45 feet. I'm 5'6", so it could fit about 8 of me. The remains of the great creature have been found all across Texas and Kansas. And if you love the 2015 Jurassic World film, you got a glimpse of the massive monster. Here's a clip to remind you. Did you freak out when it jumped out? Gotcha.
Number 10, Roman sea curses. Okay, the 1st century, a great place to begin with most things that are horrible and new to humans. Romans did things a little differently. We can't figure out yet how they engineered aqueducts or how that many people watch Colosseum battles. Yeah, I can't watch an armbar during UFC, let alone bring my family to the Colosseum. Be like, that's a lion. That's a guy getting eaten by the lion. Yeah, it's him. Ancient Roman naturalist Pliny the Elder, he wrote a book on natural history, and in said book, this go-to, might I add, on ancient history, the Elder wrote about half-human, half-fish creatures that he called nereids. That sounds like mermaids, Avatar, I don't even know, Atlanteans. He even added to his first observation detailing that the human parts of said body were covered in rough scales. Human in appearance, but still fishy nonetheless. Awesome. Guess we have those to look forward to. The Elder also recalls a seaman who would climb ships at night and then sink them. Kind of like Aquaman, only he wouldn't help people. He would actually put them in life-threatening situations. But still cool, he probably looked like a badass climbing that ship, you know? Number 9, sirens, aka mermaids. Here we go, figured I'd talk about these ones as well. The mythology surrounding sirens, it's interesting, but I don't know how I feel about it yet. We have to talk about it in the comments. I don't think we have Atlanteans flirting with sailors per se, but I do believe there's some sort of creature that's hybrid human fish, you know what I mean? On his first trip overseas in 1493, Christopher Columbus claims to have seen not 1, but 3 sirens. Yeah, he even wrote about it. He said they rose well out of the sea, but they are not so beautiful as they are said to be. Okay, he's rhyming, that's always fun. Thank you, Columbus. For their faces had some masculine traits. That's what he added afterwards. I would think I'd be a very cute mermaid. Honestly, thank you so much. I could probably trick Christopher Columbus and be like, hey, come to this island. Just wave in and do my little fish thing, whatever. So what did Christopher Columbus see? I mean, when it comes to correctly identifying places and or people, obviously Chris can get confused. He's not really our go-to guy, I don't think anymore. So historians believe Columbus may have seen a few manatees and not mermaids. Either way, I'm like, you know what? Both are kind of terrifying to see out of nowhere. Number 8, the Kraken. For ages now, sailors from Norway and Greenland have shared tales of this giant sea monster, and you've probably heard about it as well. Or if you've seen the hit franchise, Pirates of the Caribbean, you've probably seen it in IMAX. Tentacles big enough to pluck you out of your boat. This thing is terrifying, right? We all know about the Kraken. In 1857, Danish naturalist Jaekelopterus found a large squid beak, and soon after was sent parts of another specimen from the Bahamas, okay? So something was out there. He concludes that the Kraken is real and that this was proof, and that these parts were maybe part of a species of giant squid called Architeuthis ducks, which translates to ruling squid in Latin. Very little is known about giant ruling squid, of course because they're so hard to track, but we did get a photo of one in 2005 and a video of another in 2013. Number 7. Yellow Brick Road. Deep sea divers may have found the road to Atlantis. Or Oz, one of the two. Back in May 2022, this bizarre path was spotted in the Pacific after an exploration vessel, Nautilus, caught the rocky formation near Hawaii. Just a nice place of unknown everything in that ocean. Awesome, we love exploring. The exploration team said in a recent interview with WION News that our corps of exploration have witnessed incredibly unique and fascinating geological formations while diving on the Liliuokalani Ridge. The 90-degree fractures are most likely the results from, a big eruption from a volcano a long time ago. The Marine National Monument, or PNMM for short, is the largest fully protected conservation area in the world. So let's not litter anymore, maybe, I don't know. It covers more than 580,000 square miles in the ocean. So far we've only discovered 3% of its seafloor, so I'm sure there's many more discoveries of roads apparently leading to Atlantis. Let's hope. Number 6, the Great Lakes Griffin. Back in 2018 in Lake Michigan, diver Steve Liebert found what he believed was the holy grail of Great Lakes shipwrecks. Now this is exciting to some, I can't even look at photos, I have thalassophobia. The Griffin sank back in 1679. Divers have been searching for this beauty for a very long time. As a kid, Steve himself, Steve Liebert, was talking about the shipwreck when his history teacher stopped and said, "Hey, who knows, maybe one of you will find the Griffin." Imagine that, your grade 8 teacher tells you somebody will find a ship one day and that somebody was actually you. Yeah, at 76 years old, Steve discovered the wreck. It was 2018, but his research began 40 years ago. Liebert began diving back in 1981 after an amazing teacher got him motivated. It took a long time to track down, of course, but I think it was worth it, we can all agree. If you're in any Great Lakes, keep your eyes open for, 50-foot long ships from the 1600s. They're always lurking below. That's why I can't swim. Like, I put goggles on, look down, and see the top of a ship. I would throw up. I would literally, that's it. Maybe because I'm afraid of heights, and for some reason when I'm in the ocean or a lake, I feel like I'm up high. Maybe that's what it is. Number 5, toxic waste. Okay, we mentioned a yellow brick road. It's always fun, it's a fun time, a creepy looking discovery, but certainly not harmful like this next one here. Yeah, for the back 9, we're gonna crank it up a bit. Sometimes we find literal barrels of waste. This dump site here was discovered off the coast of LA. It's 3,000 feet deep, and these deep ROVs found around 27,000 barrels of waste. Looks like the climax of a Breaking Bad finale. It's just, what is going on down here? What happened? Who put these here? The 2021 discovery was deemed staggering. Yeah, that's one of many words I can say on YouTube, for sure. You can literally see in these photos this aura of toxic waste, just a plume of evil coming from these barrels. That's brutal. Recycle, please. Number 4, the frilled shark. Also alarming, just in its own natural, terrifying way. Back in 2004, marine biologists discovered a dinosaur. Yeah, they discovered the frilled shark. It was lurking around 870 meters below the surface. Now this one looks like an eel, almost. It's so scary, I don't know. Frilled sharks can grow up to 7 feet long, and they fight like Daredevil. They can hunt in complete darkness. They don't have to look, they just use their senses, and they don't use sunlight. I almost got lost there while I was doing that bit, but if I was a frilled shark, I'd be dead on still, I'd be fine. They don't need to see anything, so remember that next time you're skinny dipping. Unless you can hold your breath for a long time, you won't actually run into the frilled shark, so don't worry about that. They're only found a mile below the surface, and again, they're rare as hell. Have you ever dealt one of these? Are you a diver? Have you seen a shark? Comment down below some of your diving nightmares, just so I can read them and then go, oh, I'm never going in the ocean ever again. That's what I like doing. I like going, ooh, I'm never doing that ever again. That's what Reddit's for. Number 3, the deepest shipwreck. The USS Johnston was a US Navy destroyer which sank during the Battle of Samar back in 1944. It was after a battle with a large fleet of Japanese warships and went down. Now Victor Vescovo, who is one of the few people who has made the dive into the Marianas Trench, that's why his name sounds familiar, he was one of the people who first stumbled upon the remains of this sunken warship. The ship's remains were first found in 2019 and was known as the deepest known shipwreck, as it was found 6,456 meters deep in the Philippine Sea in the Pacific Ocean. I lost track of what I was saying. It's so deep, I can't even imagine. That's like a mountain, you know what I'm saying? We have a new record holder, believe it or not. Yeah, the world's deepest shipwreck was discovered 4 miles underwater in the Philippines. Yeah, this is now the world's deepest shipwreck that was ever discovered. This is terrifying. I want to move on right now. I'm gonna throw up. Number 2, loud ocean heat. This is just naturally and so scary. Here we go. How depressing is this one? Okay, back in 1991, scientists lowered these massive speakers, like nightclub subwoofers almost, into the waters at Heard Island. Also, like Heard Island speakers, is this a bit? I wish I was making this up. They made the pun for me. They did my job. I'm upset. These speakers emitted low frequency sounds all across our oceans. Now these signals were later picked up by receivers near California and Bermuda. And these signals contain information on the temperature of our oceans. Our oceans absorb more than 90% of energy left from global warming. Doesn't help when we lower 27,000 barrels of into it. So let's just maybe stop that for a bit. There were a few scientists who at the time were also concerned about how these low frequency sounds may be affecting our ocean life. Yeah, what does that sound like to a beluga whale? And finally, number 1, the Vasa shipwreck. Back in 1628, the Vasa sunk within 20 minutes of setting sail. This is a tragedy. This claimed the lives of 30 souls on board. How tragic is this? Now, the Swedish Navy launched the ship August 10th, 1628. It was once considered a high-tech warship, even referred to as spectacular. So what the hell happened? Well, the first rush of wind caught it off guard, started making a little topsy-turvy, and the second gush of wind sank it. Just like that. There was no war, there was nothing going on, just a bottle of clink, and then it went down. So fast. It's like the scene in Shrek where it sinks fast comedically, but this was real life, so it wasn't comedic at all. It was actually rather terrifying. There was a crowd around and everything to send it off, but the 64 bronze cannons that were installed during the rushed process of building the warship, they were deemed too heavy, evidently. The lack of oxygen in the water allowed for its rediscovery to continue its story. That's how we know how she went down. The Vasa was built with carvings all around the king at the time, King Gustav II. So when the wreck was discovered in 1961, 95% of the wood was still intact. It's deep, dark, and cold. Yeah, nothing affects it. Humans focusing too much on naval warfare rather on if the ship can actually stay afloat. That's definitely a human problem. I can't tell if this is a curse or just humans being humans, but yeah, stop installing 64 bronze cannons.